Dangote has raised concerns over high port charges and regulatory hurdles, making it costlier to lift fuel from his Lekki refinery than from offshore depots like Lomé. He warned the structure incentivizes fuel imports, undermining self-sufficiency. At a recent industry conference in Abuja, marketers under DAPPMAN accused the refinery of restrictive sales practices and non-transparent pricing. MEMAN also warned against monopolistic dominance, while IPMAN clarified local gantry loaders face fewer charges. Analysts say low-octane imports remain cheaper, and stakeholders are urging regulatory action to ensure fair access and market competition in Nigeria's evolving downstream sector. A lot happening in that sector. We do have joining us now Temitope Kolade, Associate Director, Oil, Gas and Power at Anderson, Nigeria, for the conversation. A pleasure to have you in.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good morning.
Good morning. So how would you say that the current port-related charges are impacting the competitiveness of local refined products versus imported fuel?
Yeah, I mean, it's really not helping competitiveness if you think about it. And the major issues here are in respect of port charges, levies, storage fees, and of course, the fact that we have a great infrastructure gap and the corruption that comes along this sort of operations here in Nigeria. We know what's bedeviled the Apapa ports in the past, even though a lot of that has been resolved to a very great extent. But then we know that people will typically capitalize on the fact that infrastructures are not in the best of shape. Unfortunately, and ironically too, imported fuel is now getting, maybe could even be priced lower than what you find, here in Nigeria locally because of this sort of challenges that Mr. Dangote has made references to.
And I mean, he has also made reference to specific regulatory bottlenecks. Can you help highlight that for a second, and how those particular regulations are discouraging domestic sourcing?
Well, when we talk about regulatory bottlenecks, again, I think the major agency that would put this to is the Port Authority, Nigerian Port Authority. And what has happened with the Nigerian Port Authority over the years is you would find that there is a contract with some other agencies or some other private sector guys who help to get certain things done when it comes to managing the port infrastructure. And that, in a way, leads to some inefficiencies with respect to the fact that you're now having to deal with multiple layers of personnel or operators within that area, and that in itself creates some sort of bottleneck. That accounts for like 69% of the fact that we continue to import fuel here in Nigeria. The cost structure is something that leads to some multiple charges within that, and inspection is yet another problem, right? What you find along the corridors of the port, of the seaport, is several operators doing businesses and competing at different levels. And of course, there are people that are also then working with them in government, within the authorities that should be managing the port and should ensure that things work. But when you then make it a profiteering sort of venture, it means that inefficiencies set in and people just want to do things to maximize private profits. And that's the sort of issue that we're having within that system at the moment.
And what are regulators doing about it? Are they doing enough? What more can they do to intervene with what's happening downstream?
Well, we know that there is always room for improvement, even when we think that they're doing enough. But when it comes to issues around imports and exports in Nigeria, we know that there is a huge room for development. There is a very big room for improvement in that regard. So I think we'll be too conservative, or will be too will be too large-hearted, maybe to put it another way, to say that there is no room for improvement. There is a lot to do differently when it comes to import and export in Nigeria. A lot of profiteering we know is happening within that segment of the economy, and of course, the forex issues, the foreign exchange issues add to it. But aside from that, there are a lot of people that are leveraging on the inefficiencies that we have within the system. We know that even when it comes to importing whatsoever it is, we're always billing the charges in foreign currencies. That's a problem in itself. The fact that space management is yet an issue. The authorities don't have enough facilities and even personnel to handle things, and some of those things are human generated sort of inefficiencies, if I may say. And so there is a very huge room for improvement. The customs management, and of course, everything just adds up, and it's tough doing businesses when it comes to import export in Nigeria at the moment. And that's been the case for a couple of years now, when you would even be thinking of importing through some other countries that are nearby.
And we know that is a known practice, what you just highlighted. But aside that, we have other bodies like DAPPMAN also questioning Dangote's transparency when it comes to, pricing and his sales practice. From what you know, is the pricing structure at the Dangote Refinery, is it transparent and accessible enough to, encourage broader market participation?
Sorry, I didn't get the last part of your question.
So, there have been questions around, specifically from DAPPMAN. They accuse the refinery of restrictive sales practices and non-transparent pricing. From what you have access to, do you believe that, what is available, do you think there's a pricing structure issue here with the Dangote Refinery? Do they lack transparency? Is it accessible enough so that we'll see more and broader market participation?
Thank you very much. That's clear. And apparently, it's a business, right? And Dangote, we know, is in the business to make profits, because it's not a non-for-profit business. What it then means is that when it comes to pricing, it can only be as transparent as providing information as to what gets to the customer. When it comes to what happens within the structure of the company, there is that has to do with management information, and there is always that debate as to should I make management information available to everyone? It can be a problem for the enterprise in itself. And so it wouldn't be fair on Dangote to say, hey, I want to see everything that happens within your system because the public has interest in this business. Yes, we know that would be good, but it's not also the best, right? Because it could lead to, we talked about being competitive, right? But again, for that business to stay afloat, there are certain trade secret that it's got to provide. And what needs to happen in the long run is that whatever pricing that we see in the market should have some sort of convergence, whatever it is that Dangote is doing. I do not think that Dangote should open all of its books to external parties and say, oh, this is how much, because there are issues, right? When you think about it, there is an investment of about $20 billion. And what that means is that it has to be recouped in a certain way. The question would be, how long does Dangote have to recoup that investment, right? And I think that the players within the market should just take it as it comes and say, what's happening elsewhere in the world should be able to compete with this business. And to that extent, there should be whatever price that we see in the market, to the extent that Dangote is able to provide a particular price, we would compete at a fair price, looking at whatever we're importing from outside Nigeria as well. So it will continue to raise some sort of dust, but it is what it is. When it comes to managing companies, it's like asking me to tell you what happens within a particular small business that I have set up for myself to ensure that things go on. I know that this is a little bigger than that, but at the same time, there is only so much that the public can get to know about a private enterprise.
All right, so I guess we'll have to wait for it to be listed so we can get into their books properly. Finally, before I let you go, we know that a lot of the pushback that this refinery is receiving, obviously, is because people are worried or bothered by the monopolistic tendencies. How do you think Nigeria can strike some sort of balance between protecting a massive private investment like Dangote Refinery, but at the same time ensuring open market competition?
Well, I think by and large, when we think about the monopolistic dominance, what needs to happen is the other players within the industry have to take decisive steps. There must be some acknowledgement of courage that Dangote itself has displayed over the years to get to where it is. I recall that we have the Kaduna refineries, the Port Harcourt refineries, the Warri refinery that were meant to operate, and over time we've been talking about refurbishment and getting this to work, and they've never really worked optimally, right? So if someone has then gone out there to ensure that this works, and the next thing is, oh, we're saying, oh, you're going to be monopolistic. I think that may not be altogether fair. Looking at the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act that also make some provisions around the fact that the NNPC still has a role to play, right? And that there should be no monopoly. After all, over the years, I mean, even before the PIA got signed, NNPC was sole importer of petroleum products. And what did that also mean for us? We didn't have clear insight into what was happening with respect to subsidy and all of those. And we know all that happened in that regards. I think what should happen is that every stakeholder needs to step up their game, sure that they're playing their rules very well. The NMDPRA, for instance, needs to ensure that they do more to be the right regulator, and they're doing the business to ensure that they provide some fair pricing for everyone within the business. And of course, it shouldn't really be about complaining about a particular operator, but ensuring that everybody has some level field if the stakeholders are playing their roles well.
All right, thank you very much. Temitope Kolade, Associate Director, Oil and Gas, as well as Power, Addison, Nigeria. Thank you for your perspective on this conversation.